Okay, now we're going to learn a little bit about the graphics module so that you can draw pictures and make art and do all kinds of fun graphics things, even animations. We're going to start with the basics of creating shapes and making those shapes different colors and things. So your graphics module is available under the Use a Module, which is where our robotics module was. And there are actually two modules that you need to open in order to use graphics. You're going to open the graphics module, which makes sense, and you're also going to open the shapes module. So those will give you access to various methods, various things that will help you draw shapes and make them colors and move them around. So once you have those open, you'll see a lot of different things here. So there's 3 tabs for shapes, and there's, or 4, sorry, and then there's 3 tabs for graphics. So I've written a small program over here that goes over some of the basics of making shapes. So I'm going to go through all of those and talk about how they work. So first of all, any graphics that we do in this program, we need to draw it on a window. They don't just automatically appear in this window, for example. They appear in a separate window. That's true of a lot of graphics programs, so as you move forward, just keep that in mind. So we're going to make a window, and like using the sensors with the robots, we have to give this a variable. So I've called it my window. You can call it, some people use win, W-I-N. Don't use window though, especially a capital window, because that's already the function and it'll get confused. So try to make that be something that makes sense. And then you're going to give it a width and a height, and these are in pixels. Pixels are the tiny little dots that make up pictures. They actually make up our computer screen. So whenever you see something like 800 by 600 on YouTube, you might see that, or you might see it when you're talking about computer resolution or things like that. You might see 1200 by 2000, whatever that is. Those are pixels, so those are little tiny dots that go across our screen. So you obviously don't want to make it wider or higher than your actual computer screen, but you want to make it big enough to get some things drawn on there. I usually start with 500 by 500, and then if I'm making something like a story, I might make the width a little bit bigger and the height a little bit smaller, or just play around with those variables. So you're going to put your width and your height in here. I'm going to skip these two just for a second. I promise I will come right back to them. The next thing that you need to do is to make a shape. So your window is, making a window is actually under graphics window, and you can just use one of these two. There's a couple of other ways of making windows, but these are the simplest. And then in order to make a shape, you're going to use this shape area. And there are all different kinds of shapes. There's circles, arrows, arcs, ovals, all kinds of things. So you can definitely play with those, and I'm going to show you a few of them right now. But basically, when you click on one of these, I'm going to drag over the oval, for example, you're going to be giving it points and radiuses for things that are round. For things that are rectangular or square, you're generally going to give it a list of points. It could be 3 points to make a triangle, 4 points to make a rectangle. You can give it 5 points to make a hexagon, or I mean a pentagon, or 6 points to make a hexagram, etc. So you can play with those to make that work. So I've made a circle, and I've given it a point of 250, 250, which is going to be in the middle of my screen. And I've given it a radius of 50. And once we draw this, I will talk a little bit more about the coordinates. But for right now, just know that this is in the middle. Our window is 500 by 500, and 250, 250 is our center point. These are X, Y points, which you might remember from math. Okay, so the default color for our shapes is actually a sort of purple color. So I'm going to go back up to these things where I've actually made colors, and those are under pictures. So there is make color. There are color names, and I'll talk about that later, but for right now, I would just guess. I mean, there are several hundred colors in here, so you can just guess. So when you make a color, like making a shape, you're going to give it a variable name, and it could just be color, and then you're going to give it a color name like lavender, or actually I spelled that wrong. That will not show up. Lavender or blue or green or light green, and sometimes you just have to try and it'll yell at you. And I'll show you later how to find all the color names. So I've made beige, which I ended up not using, and I've made gold. So I have my circle here, and then I'm going to set the color of my circle to this color that I just made. So I just have to tell it which shape I want to color, and then what color using a variable. And this might be color, it might be my color, it might be, I've made all these the color names just so I can keep things straight. So that's under make color. So in my set color, which is under actions, set color, and there's also set fill, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And they both basically do the same thing, but they're slightly different. We have set color, and I've told it to make my circle, this shape, gold. And then once you've done that, you're going to draw your shape onto the window that you made. So you've got a circle, and you're going to draw it on the window. And then if you continue down this program, I've just made some other shapes. I've got a square, which I've given it 2 points, and this is your top left point, and this is the bottom right point. It doesn't matter that much which order you put it in. I like to do it that way just so I know, but they are diagonal across from each other, whatever you do. And then you'll notice I've drawn it, and then I've made the color, and then I've filled it. It doesn't really matter what order you do those things in, as long as you draw it at some point. If you draw it and then make it a color and then set it to that fill, it's going to start out purple and then suddenly change to blue, which is fine, and then it'll stay blue for the rest of the program. I have set fill here, and the difference between set color and set fill, set color turns the entire thing, including the outline, to that color, and you'll see that in a minute. Set fill turns it, fills the inside of it, and then leaves a line of whatever the fill color is, and the default is black. So you'll see that there will be a small outline. And you can actually change that to be something slightly different with set outline. And you can change the width of that with set border. So you can change this, and I've got an example of this in just a second. So you can say, I want that outline to not be black, but to be a different color. Or you can make it so that that outline is a little bit bigger, and I'll demonstrate this in a second. So I've got a rectangle, I've got my square, which is going to be blue. And then I've got a rectangle, and I've given it 2 points. And the difference between the rectangle and the square, you know that a square is, of course, a type of rectangle that has even sides. So when you make your points, you have to make sure these are even. So this is 50 bigger than these two x's are 50 apart, and these two y's are 50 apart, and that means they're even. With my rectangle, these are not even. So this is 75, and this is 150. So that's going to give me a rectangular shape instead of a square shape. And then I've made it orange, so I've got orange here, set color to orange. And then I've got a green here, and I've set my outline to be green, and then I am drawing my rectangle. And then I have this wacky polygon, which I've left in the default color. So let me stick this set border in here so you can see how that works, and then we'll draw this so you can see the whole thing. So I'm going to put rectangle in here, and I'm going to make this, right now the default is 1, so I'm going to make this a little bit thicker. I'm going to make it 3, and it should make it 3. Now, if you'll notice, I've got a set color here instead of a set fill, but then because I give it an outline, it starts out without an outline and I give it one. So you can play around with those different options and see if it gives you the effect that you want. All right, we're going to walk through this program then as it draws a little more quickly, but a little slower than normal. And this will give you a good introduction to some graphics and drawing shapes. Okay, so our script is starting. It's drawing the window. Now it draws the circle. Just drew the square and it made it blue. And then setting all of its parameters for that rectangle, and then it's got a green outline, and then we have our weird polygon over here. So you can see that that's how you can make shapes. And while I'm here, let me just talk a little bit about the coordinates, and then we'll move on to another thing in the next video. So if you've used Scratch before or in math, generally speaking, this center point is 0, 0. In Calico Graphics, and actually in a lot of graphics programs, the coordinates are different. So in this program, 0, 0 starts up here. So one of the benefits of that is that you never end up with a negative X or Y. But of course, for me anyway, I know I often have to remember that and think about where I am in space. So that the center point is half of whatever your width and height are of your window. And this comes down, so we drew this rectangle at a Y of 100. So this is Y 100, X 100, so it comes down and over. And then the bottom point is Y 250, and X 175 is over here. And then our square is even further down. It's at Y 350, and this is Y 400. So you can start to get a sense of where things are, but just remember that 0, 0 is up here in the very tippy top left corner, and then that'll help you figure out where to place things on the screen. So that's an introduction to graphics of making shapes. So your window is under Windows. Your making of shapes is under Shapes. Your making colors is under Pictures. And your drawing and setting those colors once you've created them and setting your borders and things like that are under Actions. So good luck, have fun, and draw some pretty pictures.